law, relentless in the war. The legions in our hearts, shed waters in our balls. The spirit and the flesh, the emotions that arrest. The cerebral will contest, propelling the unrest. Preachers and bandits with means underhanded. The teachers pedantic and lack understanding. So sweep out the sand with the broom in your hand. Stand up, make we burn Babylon. Guess I can give the world to you, the world to you. But the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you lurking, demons searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. Cause I can give the world to you, the world to you. But the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you lurking, demons searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. With the semblance of a blaze, with gratitude and rage, we touch another page with delirious delight, impervious to light. This vitality and might encourages the flight. Preachers and bandits with means underhanded, the teachers pedantic and lack understanding. So sweep out the sand with the broom in your hand. Stand up, make we burn Babylon. Guess I can give the world to you, the world to you. But the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demons searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. Guess I can give the world to you, the world to you. But the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demons searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. The world to you, but the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demons searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. Cause I can give the world to you, the world to you. But the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demons searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. And the alarm clock goes off. And you ask yourself, why bother? Why bother waking up, brushing my teeth, getting in the car, going to the office of the notary public to get that document signed? Why bother going to my laptop to start the workday? Why bother pursuing this degree? Why bother working on this relationship? Because you see, motivation and inspiration is fleeting. You cannot depend on it. It cannot last forever. It's momentary. getting riled up by some charismatic leader somewhere as to why and motivating you and so on and so forth. That is fleeting. We've all been there. We've all been in a situation where it's hard for us to articulate in concepts, in words. Why? Without the help of emotions, without the help of motivation, without the help of the hormones raging in us, without the help of infatuation. Why? Why bother? It is commonly said by many people, and I believe Nietzsche has a saying, which I'm paraphrasing now, which basically states that if you have a why, then you can overcome any how. If you have a why, then you will find a how. But no one ever quite tells you how to answer that question. They make it seem obvious, like, oh, just go find your why. Where's the roadmap for this why? And a lot of times we fall, or we're prone to falling for going to some library of preloaded whys, whys that are told to you by some authority, some parent, some teacher, some institution, whys that are told to you by some tradition, whys that are told to you by perhaps some articulated reason. You're in the danger of picking up one of these whys, and it makes you feel good, and you can say, yes, I'm going to go with that. Or you go with some charismatic leader. You go to some rally somewhere and they tell you, this is the why. Is it your why? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the channel. My name is Ike Ogiamin, and I'm your host. And over here, we talk about being better and doing better. And what are we doing today? What we're doing today is we're breaking down the possible ways to answer that question. We're breaking down the why question into a series of what's. What do you want? What are you going to do when you get what you want? Imagine you had everything that you wanted and you're off in some island somewhere with all the resources and all the freedom that you crave. What would you do? What are the possible ways of answering the question? What are the possible categories of the different kinds of people? What kind of a person am I? What motivates me? This is what we're going to do today. Shout out to Nicer in the house. Shout out to Richard in the house. Shout out to Jerome in the house. Shozan in the house. Ricardo, ha ha ha. Magic Podcast has finally caught the epic intro theme. Indeed, the unspecialist in the building. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Much appreciated. Now, let me get a one in the chat if you understand what the idea that we're going behind here is. People always tell you, find your why. What's your why? If you have a why, you'll be able to encounter anyhow. Find your why. All that kind of motivational crap. But how do I answer the question why? Is it obvious? Do I go to church? Do I go to school? Do I go to some institution? Do I go to some rally? Somebody tells me why. Some authority, some tradition, some kind of articulated reason from some book somewhere. They tell me why. If it was that easy, I should have known by now. There is, and we got WRPS in the house.
And he put down 6 because he's a troll like that. Oh yes, Javier, your purpose. I personally hate that phrase, your purpose. I hate it with a passion. Oh my God, I hate it so much. Stay on your purpose. You know, your purpose. What are you talking about? Presumably you're healthy. Presumably you're a productive person. Presumably you don't have all kinds of emotional issues. Okay? If you have issues, you're working through it with your priest, your shaman, your therapist, whomever. We're not talking about people who don't have all the spark plugs firing here. We're talking about being able to articulate that answer to why. Over here, we keep things simple, measurable, actionable, and intuitive. So we're talking about answering the question the way we answer things over here. Not with fluff and inspiration and all that stuff that makes me want to throw up. No, that's for... Okay, let me back down. All right. But this is fun, okay? This is fun. This is fun for me, and it's fun for you too, okay? Should be fun for you. And it will be as useful as people purport it to be. It is true that with a why, you will be able to overcome anyhow. Shout out to Red Sings the Blues in the house. He says, donations to you, man. Thank you for your contribution, which went to getting more gear. Well, great. It's always a pleasure to be able to help. Got a case for my Rodecaster and 2 more mic stands. That's great. That is excellent. You'll be able to do interviews on the road now. Go out and check out Red Sings the Blues. Go ahead and please subscribe to his channel. He's doing good work out there. Yes. Shout out to WRPS again. Real advice, not mushy stuff. Real advice, not mushy stuff. This is not motivation or inspiration land. It could motivate you and inspire you. Yes. But I'm not going to do the rah, rah, rah. Oh, trust me, I could. I specialize in that kind of stuff. Oh, yes, we could get in some kind of hypnotic bliss over here and go up to the mountaintops. Yes, we could do that, but come on, right? Come to my gigs for that after the Rona, okay? You can see me live on stage and we can get all riled up together. But over here, we keep things measurable, simple, actionable, intuitive. What is the landscape? What is the map for answering this question? Why? Shozan, I'll open up the panel in a little bit and you can ask your questions. You can definitely ask your questions, but let's get right into it. What is the danger? The danger is, number one, you don't have a why. But the bigger danger is you go out there and you pick out from prepackaged whys some kind of prepackaged motivation. Something from tradition, something from some authority, something from some book somewhere, some charismatic leader somewhere. And they tell you that this is the why. And it feeds your emotion. You feel inspired and you mistake the inspiration that you feel for an articulated why. This leaves you open to all kinds of resentment, all kinds of jadedness. It leaves you open to becoming a terror to yourself and to those around you. This happens to far too many people. We are all prone to it. And today we're going to try to lay out the landscape such as it is, to the best of our ability. So let's get right into it. Let us get right into it, okay? And as you would suspect, we are going to look at it from the point of view of the possible answers, the possible ways to answer, the clusters of concepts that surround this thing. Because if why was simple, if why was as simple as some people make it sound, just find your purpose, then, okay, it is neither simple nor is it easy. It is neither simple nor easy. It is a task to be done. And we are going to try to lay out the landscape of how to go about this task. Obviously, I'm not going to be telling you your why. I'm not going to be telling you your why, obviously. What I'm going to be doing is telling you the possible ways of answering this question, the pitfalls that are along the way. So why bother? Here's the thing. You need to break down why into a series of whats and then some hows. It is not a simple thing. In other words, it is complex. In other words, it is manifold. It is not a simple thing. Okay? So ask yourself this question. What do you want? There's not an infinite number of answers to this. What exactly is it you want, ladies and gentlemen? We will start with a very simple one, Resources is a very simple one. Everybody wants that, right? Resources. People say we want resources. I want money. I want to be a high value man. Yes, 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 yes. I want that sweet cheddar. I want that sweet cheddar, but let's go about starting with this basic question and looking at resources, okay? And let's talk about the things that I think are more important that cluster around the possible question or the possible answers to the question. You need to know, first and foremost, are you intrinsically motivated or extrinsically motivated? If you know the answer to this question, let me get a 1 in the chat. Have you asked yourself the question? And do you know the answer to the question as to whether or not you are intrinsically motivated or extrinsically motivated? One way to go about finding out, at least for me, is to ask yourself this. Okay, if you had all the resources that you want and you are in an island somewhere by yourself, what would you do? Not what would you do with the resources, what would you do? In other words, if you had everything, then what? You have all the money, all the resources, all the Wi-Fi, all the time, all the freedom, and you're alone in your island, in your castle. What would you do? What would you do then? The purpose is achieved. What would you do? I think it's easy for people to know whether they're intrinsically motivated. I think if you're extrinsically motivated, that's when you need to interrogate yourself to find out if you truly are extrinsically motivated. Because the intrinsically motivated selfish bastards such as myself, we already know that. We're like, oh, well, I am self-motivated. I'm a self-starter. I got things that I want to do. I don't really care much about what else is going on out there. But this is the first thing, the first kind of stop on this landscape here. The first little intersection is, are you intrinsically motivated or are you extrinsically motivated? And you need to answer that question yourself. So one of the things that comes up, okay, one of the things that comes up with the kinds of people who try to answer this question for you is they will tell you, hey, you need to find out, or you need to you need to work for something larger than yourself. Has somebody heard that before? You know, people always tell you, oh, the purpose, you know, to drive you, what gives you drive is you need to work for something that is larger than yourself. For people like me, that's a bunch of BS. Okay? That's a bunch of BS. That's not how people like me roll. We don't do that. This is not about the objective effects of what I do, because we will all have a positive effect or negative, and by positive I just mean an actual effect on our environment. But this doesn't have anything to do with whether or not we're intrinsically motivated or extrinsically motivated. Telling somebody like me that I need to find something larger than myself to work towards does not compute. Will I indeed affect the world with the things that I do? Yes. Will me coming out here making this YouTube video have a positive effect on people? Yes. Is that what motivates me? Hell no. Shout out. Thank you very much to the Corner Store podcast. Thank you. You're asking about the GT Racer chair. Yes, I like it. I keep the back very straight. I got the lumbar support all the way down there. I like to have a very good posture. Okay. And the chair is comfortable. Thank you for asking. Yes, Felicia, you're a mod. So, for those of us whom are intrinsically motivated, when we imagine ourselves in that little island with all the things that we want, we're just going to be like, oh yeah, I'm now just going to be able to write all those books and read all this stuff and, you know, create all these things. And it's just going to be me. That's how we are. You need to know if that's how you are or not. And don't listen to those people who tell you about things that are larger than yourself. That's for extrinsically motivated people. Again, let the difference be clear. It's not about the effect that you actually have, objectively speaking, on society, on the external world. Mozart wasn't thinking, oh, you know what? Ike in the 21st century is going to get a kick out of my music. No, he wrote that music most likely because he just had to. He loved it. It was just what he does. For some people, that's not how they roll. The world, however, is dominated by the kinds of people who go around telling you that you should be looking outside yourself. Great. That is only a percentage of the population. I don't know if it's 50-50. I don't know the breakdown, but at least I know there's two sides to this particular first intersection in our journey on the map of understanding what, we want. Because the question is your why. Why bother? But we're going to break it down to a series of whats and hows so that we can answer, or we can draw out the map so that we can articulate to ourselves why bother. Because inspiration and motivation are short-lived. And if we don't answer this question, or if even worse, we go ahead and just pick out someone else's why, join some nonprofit organization because somebody told us that that's what our purpose is, you're just going to be a terror to yourself and to everyone around you. You're going to get jaded, resentful, and you're going to be a shitty person to be around. That's what tends to happen to far too many people, Far too many people get into this particular conundrum. We need to be able to navigate and get away from landing on the mines in this minefield here. So ask yourself the question, and sorry for the typo over here. That should be If you had all the resources you dreamed of, okay, what would you do? Not with the resources, okay, but what would you do with yourself? Imagine you had no wants pushing you, okay? All the wants are taken care of. What do you want? You answered the question. Now you have everything. What would you do? Because the doing is not going to involve the pursuit of certain ends. And the way in which you answer this question will let you know whether or not you're intrinsically motivated or extrinsically motivated. It'll confirm to you, I really need people around. I'm really a politician type. I want to motivate others. I would like to build. I would like legacy. I would like to be able to improve the lot of this group, that group, or the other group. Or if you're like me, you're just going to be like, I'm just going to be writing books and painting paintings, and who cares who's around? Both of us, both extrinsically and extrinsically, or intrinsically and extrinsically motivated people, will have positive effects on the external environment, but we are coming from a very different place. We're coming from a very different place, such that I cannot even understand that whole work for a bigger purpose, something larger than yourself argument. It does not even register with people like me. So the first thing you need to understand is to answer this question of what you want, and then put yourself in that island when you have it all, and then ask yourself what you would do. This will help to crystallize certain things, and it'll help to focus your mind. Let me get a 1 in the chat if this so far is making sense. Again, we're trying to lay out the map. What's the roadmap of this why? Because it's not simple. It's neither simple nor easy. People keep on telling you, hey, find your purpose. What is your why? If you have a why, you'll be able to handle any how. But they never quite tell you. They just give you a list of possible whys. They tell you usually their own. Or if there's some charismatic leader and a fraud, they'll recruit you. How do you think that's how cults roll. They come and they tell you the why. It's their why. They're charismatic. They got talent. They can. And now you're part of their silly little program. They've put that software in your head. And you fall for it. So this is real stuff. Okay? This is stuff that is very, very important. And thank you for the 1. Just to make sure that we're tracking here. Excellent, Felicia says, LOL, the key when you are externally motivated is to remember you are the one that chooses to do that. Exactly. Don't join the brand narrative that's already pre-made. Again, let me restate. We are healthy, okay? We are not emotionally unbalanced. We don't have all kinds of baggage to deal with. We're not crazy. We are actually also productive. This is not something about coming out of some deep, dark rot. This is, you're okay. You're doing well. You're good. Because you're okay, you're doing well, and you're good, you know that you need to articulate the answer to the question. You know that you cannot just depend upon motivation, getting riled up, or go pick from some authority, some tradition, some seeming reason that is articulated somewhere by someone else that appeals to your brain and it tickles your fancy. And you say, you know what? I like that line of reasoning, I think I'm going to go with Immanuel Kant. I think I'm going to go with Schopenhauer. Nietzsche seems cool. Immanuel Kant, Schopenhauer, and Nietzsche were men. They were human beings. So what the hell is wrong with you? How dare you outsource the most important things? How dare you outsource the most important things? So, ladies and gentlemen, if we can do this simple practice, let's then go ahead and say, okay, well, I can figure out if I'm intrinsically motivated or extrinsically motivated. Let's talk about certain pitfalls of the intrinsically motivated people and pitfalls of the extrinsically motivated people. Okay? We're just beginning to lay out the landscape. The landscape is filled with minds and so on and so forth. Your why is not a simple thing. It is also not an easy thing. It is a complex manifold of possible routes with possible implications that begin with certain kinds of motivation having to do with your psychological predispositions. So if you are intrinsically motivated, it is clear, it is obvious the kinds of pitfalls that you can fall for, okay? You can become very selfish, disconnected from social reality, and you don't even see it. That is the thing. It's not that you see how you're disconnected. You don't even see it. Because when you're intrinsically motivated, you're up here. And also, you're probably an introvert to boot. Maybe, because these two things don't necessarily go hand in hand, okay? But if you're an intrinsically motivated introvert, like I am, and you're in big danger of getting lost. Just getting lost somewhere in a world of your own imagination. Just completely disconnected from the social reality. And you might even think it's a good thing. You go, yes, it's good. But no, it's not good. And I cannot best articulate why it is not good given my particular disposition. But I know that I need to know that this is a danger and it is my blind spot. Let me get a 1 in the chat if the idea of having a blind spot and not really even knowing why it is bad is registering here. There must be 1 or 2 people that are intrinsically motivated here, right? And you should know that no matter how on the ball you think you are, no matter how all put together you think you are, living in your lonely island over there, and you're just as happy as can be, you don't know that you are disconnected in a way that is dangerous. You don't understand the dangers of that particular disconnect. And I'm talking about myself now because this is my type. This is the minefield that you have to navigate. You need to push and expand yourself into the social sphere. You need to push and expand yourself into that realm of quote unquote things that are bigger than yourself. Not because that's ever going to motivate you. No, it's never going to motivate me. But because that's where your blind spot is. And wisdom will tell you that you need to check your blind spots. Otherwise, you're in danger of just completely getting untethered and floating out into some crazy space, okay? So it's more self-explanatory and it is simple. However, what are the pitfalls of extrinsically motivated people? Okay, I put it over there. What are the pitfalls of extrinsically motivated people? People whom work for things outside themselves. I find since I'm not in this group, perhaps I shouldn't, or I should make my bias very clear. But I find this particular group to be more prone to fall into their particular pitfalls and fall into their particular traps. The first thing that I said there is becoming jaded. Why would you become jaded? Well, guess what? When you're extrinsically motivated, you're trying to operate outside a world or outside in a world where you assume that you know where the handles are. Okay? I'm going to do X. How do I do X? Oh, I go over to this handle in the social space, in the political space. I'm going to revolutionize education. I know where the handles are, and I'm going to do this and that and the other. Boy, we already know how difficult it is to even understand ourselves. We already know how opaque we are to ourselves. How dare we even begin to think that we have a clear understanding of where the particular handles are in order to be able to push this button, turn this lever in order to achieve certain outcomes. I'm not saying that handles are not there. I'm not saying that you cannot do it. I'm saying that you are going to just run headlong, or you're in the danger of doing this, run headlong into just thinking that is an easy proposition. Oh, I'm 22 years old and I took a sociology class. I am going to change the world. What? That is not the danger. The danger is after you then find out that you don't know what you're talking about. The world is a rotten place. Politics is a dirty game. You fall flat on your face and now you're jaded. And what happens when people are jaded? They become resentful. They turn all that venom, okay, and they spew it out, okay? They turn all that venom and they spew it out, become a terror to everybody around them. They become insufferable a-holes because they thought they were going to change the world. Be careful. If you're extrinsically motivated, first thing you need to know is that you don't know anything about how the world really works. You don't know anything about how the complex system of human relations works. You barely know yourself, and you're just one individual. You do not understand the right buttons to push in order to get the outcomes, because all these things are non-linear. Let me get a 1 in the chat if this is understood. Basically, I'm saying a complex system made up of complex individuals does not have these linearities where you say, if I do more of this, I'll get more of that. No, that's not how it works. You push this over here, you think it's going to go up, it goes sideways. Because there's so many feedback loops and so many things going on. Even as an individual, even in your particular biology, it is difficult to know where to push. What button do I push? What are the inputs I need to put in order to get the outputs that I want? If you are extrinsically motivated, you're asking why? And you say, well, what do I want? Okay. And now I know, I've done the experiment in my head. I know for sure that I'm motivated by external things. I want to do things in the world. Don't go thinking that it's a question of simple formulas, a question of simple inputs and outputs, a question of simple linear equations. No, not linear at all. Things go backwards on you all of a sudden, and you don't even know why they went backwards on you. Complex systems have a mind of their own. Human societies have a mind of their own. Just give a simple example, okay? You can be able to handle one child. You can think you understand the psychology of one child. But put them together, now you're dealing with the psychology of a mob. Put 5 kids together. The mob is way more stupid, way more unpredictable than any one individual in the mob. Way more unpredictable, way more stupid, way more dangerous, way more likely to blow up in your face than any particular individual in the mob. You go, but I see nicer in the mob, and there's Alex, and there's this. I know all these people, but you put them together, it is actually a different animal. It is actually, quite in reality, a different thing altogether now. It is not a question of addition, multiplication. Just do this curve over here. This will increase in proportion to, it becomes different. You need to know this if you're extrinsically motivated, because otherwise it's going to blow up in your face. You're going to become jaded. you're going to become like every other politician out there who is idealistic and going to go out there and change the world. And what happens? And then they just become part of the beast, become some jaded, money grubbing, power hungry. And it's all a result of naivete. So don't be naive. Don't think this is an easy thing. The roadmap of why bother is a complex thing, okay? And WRPS says, I think Ike is onto something here. Jordan Peterson had all the right intentions. He even broke down complexities on human relations, but still, due to him receiving so much flack, okay, he got taken down. In other words, if I were to stick with the Jordan Peterson example here, to the degree to which I understand it, and relate it to what we just talked about, the mob, the group, because when you're extrinsically motivated, you're trying to work on handles that are out there in social space. A Jordan Peterson type could be like, hey, you know what? I know this person. I know that person. I have had hours and hours on my psychotherapist chair listening to individuals. I have all the data and the psychometrics of how people operate. And. However, there is a different beast out there called a group with a different brain, a different heart, and a different stomach. It is not linear. You cannot just add up a bunch of individuals. You can't just take these different coefficients and parameters and then graph it. It doesn't do what you expect it to do. Don't fall for this. You will become jaded. You will become resentful. You will take it out on everyone else. Even when it comes to one-on-one relationships. And this is the last part of the pitfalls here. Even when it comes to one-on-one relationships, you will feel that feeling of not being appreciated. And to any of the ladies out there, you should especially watch out for this one, because based on the anecdotal evidence that I have and the literature that is out there, okay, you can look at the studies. Women are more likely to be extrinsically motivated in relationships, viewed from a particular vantage point, okay? Viewed from a particular vantage point, they could be said to be more extrinsically motivated, and they're going to want to do for you. And then guess what happens? And let me get a one in the chat if this is understood. The person that is thinking that they're doing something for other people ends up having this feeling that they're not appreciated, that everything that they're doing is not appreciated. Why am I not appreciated? The problem is you put that responsibility on yourself. You should be able to take responsibility for your actions. Don't expect appreciation when you are the one that decided that you wanted to do this stuff. To my extrinsically motivated people out there, don't go around expecting appreciation. It is extremely selfish of you. No one asked you to do anything. Nobody asked you to do anything. You are trying to satisfy your motivations. How dare you blame other people for not appreciating it? Because you don't even... Because 9 times out of 10, they actually do appreciate it, but you just don't perceive it that way. Because in your head, you've created some fantasy island about how this all works. You have gone outside of yourself and you've gone into someone else. First and foremost, you know how complicated you are. You're opaque to yourself. But you ran outside of yourself and you went out there to go play these games with someone else. and you thought that they would just be pushing your little dopamine buttons whenever, appreciation, appreciation, appreciation. 9 times out of 10, they actually appreciate it, but you don't even know what it looks like, or you think they're not appreciating it in the way you think you should be appreciated. And how dare you do that? No one asked you to do anything, okay? Nobody asked you to do anything. It should start and end with you. You are extrinsically motivated. You go do your stuff. You satisfy yourself and you stop it, okay? Stop taking your resentment and your jadedness and spewing out your venom into the world. So, this is the beginning, okay? This is the beginning of the map. Understanding, are you intrinsically motivated? Are you extrinsically motivated? And then, what is the minefield that awaits me? What is the minefield that awaits me depending on the type? Again, if you're intrinsically motivated, you're going to get self-absorbed, selfish, disconnected, and you're not even going to know it. You're going to be floating on cloud 9. The thing about the intrinsically motivated people is at least the dangers are very different, okay? The dangers are very different. But depending on where you are, know, okay? Know very clearly. See what's going on in the chat. Big Mad said, next snap. What? WRPS says, they project the group. Okay, let me see if maybe you started. This again is okay point. And why many lose their faith in God or... I see. It makes sense. It makes sense. Yeah. When you misunderstand the complexities of things, you end up being jaded, but no, it was your damn fault. Nobody is to blame. It's not, oh my God, politics is a dirty game, or oh my God, these people are. It's like, no, you are the one that did all of this. It was all on you. So you need to know. Don't think that you're going to go out there and get your jollies. Don't think you can see the handles quite clearly of the buttons to push and the things to do. You just came around. The species has been around for millennia. You just got here. You have no clue what's going on. And you have no clue how it works. You have no clue how it works. Black Nitro in the house. Exactly, Big Mad. The minefield is your ignorance. In both ends, for the intrinsically motivated person, you're ignorant as to the importance of the social landscape around you. And that can be very dangerous. That can be equally as dangerous. These two things are equally dangerous, okay, if you do not understand it. And then for the extrinsically motivated person, okay, you're ignorant, and then you get jaded, and then you get resentful, and then you start spewing all kinds of hatred out there, and you don't feel appreciated and all that stuff. You need to take full responsibility for your projects. You need to take full responsibility for your whys. At least the intrinsically motivated people know that. They don't go around going, no one is showing me any appreciation. Okay? So watch out. Watch out. Exactly. If we knew how it worked, we would be gods. All right? And let's wait. Maybe the AI gods will come and figure out this very complex tangle of complex systems, right? What is another possible answer to the question? Because again, your why is what we're trying to get at. And we'll tie it up in a nice little bow. We'll also open up the panel and we'll discuss this. As I said, this is neither simple nor easy. It is complex, okay? But we can lay it down by breaking it into a series of what's, how's, possible pitfalls, and so on and so forth. And then you, hopefully, can navigate this landscape and come up with your why at the end with a very, very unnaive, wide open-eyed view of what it means, insofar as that is possible to you, right? To the best of your own ability. Okay, so we just list some other things that you could possibly want. Okay, you want freedom. Who likes freedom here? Who are the travelers here? Okay, those people who are like, I want freedom to travel. I want freedom to be able to live and work on my own terms. That's kind of like their why. They like to be able to, just run off. They like to be untethered. That's kind of their thing, This involves resources as well, but some people want resources just so they can get more resources. And they don't mind. They could be in the cave toiling all day. They don't want to travel. They're not into, I want to see the sights and so on and so forth. That's not really their thing. Let me get a 1 in the chat if freedom is kind of your motivating factor. If you're looking for freedom, the freedom to travel, the freedom to work where you want to work, be able to live where you want to live, do what you want to do, right, on your own terms. This is a big why, or a big motivational factor, okay? Even though I will ask you to immediately answer the question, if you had that freedom, then what? Okay? Then what? Shout out. Shout out to the super chatter. Share this brother's channel, he says. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you very much. What is that? Kareem Sharif or Kareem Sharif? Sharif. Sheriff. Sharif. Thank you, thank you, thank you very much for the $25 super chat. What are the pitfalls? What are the dangers of the freedom type? Okay. Time to party once you got that. Okay. Here is the danger. Let me tell you, okay? Get out of debt, then teach. Very good. That's a very clear kind of, that's a clear, very, very clear extrinsic kind of organizing principle there. I want to get out of debt, turn around, teach others how to get out of debt. Okay. The freedom types need to ask themselves a question, though. The feeling of freedom that you're pursuing, or dare I say, the uneasiness that you feel that makes you want to jump out of your chair and run, get on a flight and go to East Asia somewhere, the uneasiness that you feel may not be taken away by the freedom that you seek. Let me say that again. The uneasiness that you feel that makes you want to go out, makes you want to do things on your own terms, may, or when you apply the freedom to it, the freedom may only be a topical solution, only a surface solution, okay? Only an aesthetic solution. In other words, you're going to get in the plane, you're going to fly to Dubai, you're going to land there, you're going to feel great for about 2 weeks. Because novelty always works. Okay, distractions always work. So it's not like you're not going to feel something. You'll feel something, but trust me, if you cannot get rid of the uneasiness right here, right now, you're never going to get rid of the uneasiness. You're just going to keep on traveling and traveling and traveling and traveling. As the saying goes, wherever you go, there you are. Wherever you go, there you are. If you think that it's your job that's making you uneasy, you need to stop, because the moment, the present, is all we ever have. Yesterday, when you are present and awake and conscious, what does it feel like? It feels like the moment. It feels like the present. Today, awake, present, and conscious, what is it? It's the moment. It's the present. Guess what? When you fly over to Dubai somewhere, it's going to be the moment and the present. The future that you're trying to get to is going to be the moment and the present. The past that you're looking, it's always the moment and the present. If you cannot make peace with the moment and the present, you're never going to have peace. So for the freedom, if freedom is your answer, you need to challenge that. Concepts don't come from nothing. Everything is learned. I wonder what you mean by that, Big Mad. So, for the freedom types, what is your pitfall? The pitfall is the ignorance again. Okay, it's always ignorance. But your particular kind of ignorance is thinking that there is some external solution, some kind of thing that you're going to run away from, when indeed all you ever have is the moment. Traveling may be a great thing for you. Traveling may be, a hobby. Maybe you're going to, because you love traveling, you're going to start a travel channel. You're going to actually there's going to be some actual positive thing that comes out of it. But if you think that that is going to be your quote unquote purpose, you're going to be, you're in for a rude awakening. Wherever you go, there you are. Wherever you go, all you have is the moment. The moment. The moment. Everything is always the moment until you die. And if you cannot make peace with the moment, if you cannot make peace with yourself right now, if your neck is tight because you don't have the freedom to move to Dubai, after you go to Dubai and there's a topical kind of feeling of freedom and release, guess what? Your neck's going to get tight again. You need to be able to remove the tightness of your neck first so that you can clearly answer the question of what motivates you. Because you are in the danger of making your purpose about some topical solution to a malady that affects you. And the malady is just simple anxiety, simple anxiousness, simple uneasiness. Simple anxiety, anxiousness, uneasiness. Nothing special. Again, nothing clinical. You're not clinically anxious or anything. You just have some typical anxiety. And you think your purpose is to travel. No. Before you can answer that question, you need to get rid of that anxiety, because that anxiety is going to follow you everywhere. And you're going to spend a lot of money on plane tickets, and you're not going to get anywhere, so to speak. Shout out. Lots of lots of things going on in the chat. So I may open up I may open up this one early because there's lots of stuff going on here. Okay? So leaving a mark, that one is kind of self-explanatory. It is similar to leaving a mark. It's almost like a combination, in my mind, of the intrinsically and extrinsically motivated type. Because in order to leave a mark, as opposed to just trying to change things, there is something that you need to be exceptionally good at. So that is some kind of intrinsic drive that you have. Unless your kind of leaving a mark is just the BS kind of just going around to insinuate yourself into the social fabric and splatter yourself all over there. And if that's your mark, you need to rethink that, because you're going to end up being jaded. But if your leaving a mark is, you know what? I'm going to be the best wood carver that ever existed. and I'm going to make sure my name goes down in the history books. That's a little bit more balanced. Because that, at least you can clearly see the handles. The handles are, I am going to work 24/7 on my craft, and I'm going to try to market it. I understand that it's not guaranteed, on and on and on, right? So we are asking, why bother? Why do anything? Not from the point of view of inspiration or hormones pushing you. Yee! Woo! No, not that. We're talking about something you can articulate, something that's not ready-made, that wasn't told to you by your parent, your pastor, some philosopher, some charismatic leader you didn't get from a political organization, something that you thought through by, first of all, figuring out, am I intrinsically motivated? Am I extrinsically motivated? Is my motivation me simply just trying to cover up some kind of anxiety I have, some kind of little tick that I have? First of all, you have to center yourself, obviously, right? You got to be very well centered and not naive so that you don't go around chasing your tail. There's a lot of tail chasing that goes on, is basically what I'm trying to say. A lot of tail chasing, especially in the freedom aspect. People who think, it's nice enough to travel, you know? Well, why? Why? And then they will tell you stuff like, you know what? I just don't feel, I always feel like uneasy. I'm just sitting there and I'm just like, I wish I could just take my bag and leave right now. Well, guess what? The moment will follow you everywhere. You and the moment will go everywhere. And you're going to keep on feeling like you want to grab your backpack and leave. You may have a purpose in this particular arena here. It may surround something that has to do with freedom. But you need to get rid of the notion that you're going to escape yourself. So take care of yourself. Get grounded. Deal with the moment. In other words, go watch my videos on meditation and figure out how to master your subjective consciousness, because your subjective consciousness is not going anywhere. You're going to take that crap with you over to Dubai. You're going to take that crap with you over to Bali or wherever you're going, right? Your cruises, and so you're going to take all that crap with you. Investigate it, interrogate it, get rid of it so that you can maybe more clearly see what your purpose is around this area of freedom, okay? So, then there is the question of what will you do with it? This is simple strategy. Now you've cleared out all the BS. The psychological BS is what we started up with. Psychological BS is, am I intrinsically motivated or extrinsically motivated? What are the pitfalls, okay? Oh, crap. Good. I can't be naive if I'm extrinsically motivated. Otherwise, I'm in danger of becoming jaded and spewing my venom all out there, okay? I can't be thinking that, oh, I just want freedom and this and that. That's kind of my thing. Okay, I want resources so I can be free. Maybe that is just something, it's just some kind of an ointment that you're going to put on your anxiety. And your anxiety is not going anywhere because it's just a feature of who you are. So you need to become comfortable with anxiety, because for you, the moment is simply anxiety. And until you grab a hold of that thing simply by paying attention to it, perceiving it, observing it, becoming the observer, observation precedes control, and then you can get past that, and then you can more clearly see what exactly is it that you want. And then what will you do with it? In other words, step by step, simple. This part is simpler, right? The strategic thing, after you clean the slate of the psychological BS and understand where you stand and are not naive, you have your eyes open, then what are you going to do with that thing that you get, okay? And here's the last part, and we're going to go into the last part a little bit. The last part is ask why until it bottoms out. Ask why until it bottoms out. What do I mean by this? What do I mean by this? Well, it's simple. You know how people ask, or kids, well, why do I have to wear a shoe, Daddy? Because of this. Why do I have to do this? Because of that. Why do I have to do that? Ba, ba, ba. And then it bottoms out at some point and you say, because I said so, right? You need to ask that question. You could say, I want resources. Why? So that I can better my family. I want to buy my parents a house. Why? So that they give up. Why? At some point, it's going to bottom out into, well, because, they have to live and I think life is good. Or something like that. Now, there are several kinds of whys and several ways in which they break down on a very surface level, okay? This is not a philosophy course, okay? So we're going to keep it simple here, okay? We're simply trying to investigate this question of why because I think it's very important, okay? I think it's very important. It's as important that people say it is. In other words, if you don't have a why, it's going to be hard, okay? But it is hard also to figure out the why. And that's why most people don't figure it out. And that's why they go with ready-made whys. That's why they go join cults. That's why they glom themselves onto some political association, right? Or this or that or the other because they cannot figure out the why. And we're trying to draw out the landscape of the why. We talked about the psychological aspects. And now we're going to talk about certain things about simple logic, just simple appeals to authority, for example, okay? The appeal to authority is one that is, I think, that's a bottom too. If your thing is because the cult leader said so, you want to get there really quick. You want to understand that your reason you're doing this is because the cult leader said so, because the United Nations says so, because the Constitution says so, because your father said so, because the church says so. And you want to get to that answer very quickly. Don't deceive yourself with the surface level stuff. You want to ask why, until you're like, you know what? I'm just going with authority, man. And if that's where you bottom out, know that's where you're bottoming out. And go about your merry way. Bite-sized philosophy. I think, therefore I thrive versus I think, therefore I am. Let's get down to some metaphysics and epistemology, shan't we, huh? You crazy folks in the chat. Bottom it out, okay? If you're doing stuff because somebody told you to do it, just be honest with yourself. Get there. And if you find that to be less than satisfactory, you figured out something. Because now you can move on. A lot of people are out there doing things because of an authority. It's not a big deal. It's not so surprising that could happen, right? I mean, your parents told you because I said so, right? You ask questions, and most parents, okay, not all our parents are philosophers, right? Very few people are philosophers. So most parents will tell you things, most parents will appeal to authority. Most parents are not going to give you some kind of a construct, some kind of a puzzle for you to keep on solving for the rest of your life to figure out why exactly they told you. So we're already kind of pre-programmed to have reasons that appeal to authority for why we are doing what we want to do, having the purpose that we think we have. You want to quickly get to that point. You want to quickly get to that point. Good point, WRPS. I wasn't raised that way. This is how I was raised. That's an appeal to authority. And you need to stand firm on that ground, is what I'm saying. If that's the ground, right? See it very clearly. Understand the nature of the authority. Trust that authority. Put it right there. Bam. That's my bedrock. How I was raised is what I'm going with. Don't be deceiving yourself with all the other surface level stuff of why. Keep asking why, until you find out, it's because my dad said so. And if you're satisfied with that, great. If you're not satisfied with that, excellent. Now, you begin your journey. You go start from the beginning. Go ask, am I intrinsically motivated or extrinsically motivated? If I'm alone in that island and I have all the resources, what would I do? That'll give you an inkling as to both whether you're intrinsically motivated or extrinsically motivated, and also the kinds of things you like to do, the kinds of things that push you, right? And then you're going to watch out for the pitfalls, okay? If I'm intrinsically motivated, I'm not going to be naive about it. These are complex systems. I have no clue what I'm doing. I am not going to go out there and blame other people and say they don't appreciate me, or I'm jaded and I am resentful, right? If freedom is the thing that I think I want, I'm going to be very clear about it. I am going to understand that what exactly is that am I running from? Let me deal with that first so I can clearly see if this freedom thing makes sense, okay? But if the authority thing is what works for you, then boom, stick with it, okay? Stick with it, know it. You have actually, you know what? Congratulations. Congratulations. If you stop here and you're like, because my parents said so, and I'm down with that, boom, you won. Because now you have a why. Now you have a why. And your why is an appeal to authority. Shozan has the warrior spirit. He has some Spartan values. Honor. This is Sparta. Yes. And the honor defined within a particular context, okay? This is more of an appeal to tradition, okay? Because honor has to be within a context, okay? That warrior ethos is also within a context, okay? It's not just free floating, okay? And then you interrogate that. You break it down. Thank you very much, Full Circle Essentials, for the $5 super chat. He says, do what you say you're gonna do. Stand on your square. Yes, how do you stand on your square? Clear out all the cobwebs and all the dust of all the crap, okay? All the people that have sold you books about telling you, you need to do something that is larger than yourself. And you need to do blah, 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 blah. Anybody telling you what you need to do and why? BS. If I came to this stream and I started telling you what your purpose was, you would know that I was full of crap. What I'm doing is I'm laying down a low resolution map because this is not some deep level course, okay? If you happen to come over one day and we're buddies and we sit by the fireplace and we're pouring scotch, yes, we can get deeper with this. We can get down, we can really go all the way. We can have a 8-hour conversation over some scotch and get deep. But we're laying down a low resolution map here that says, hey, this is not me answering the question. How could I possibly answer the question? But what are the possible ways to answer? What are the things to consider? What is the cluster of concepts around it? It has to do with your psychology to begin with. Am I intrinsically motivated? Am I extrinsically motivated? What are the pitfalls there? Blah, 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 blah. Okay, let me see about where it bottoms out, okay? Appeals to reason, okay? If you're appealing to reason, this will bottom out. This will bottom out and it becomes a how. Let me explain this. Let me explain this a little bit, okay? And I'm going to use mathematical physics, let's say, okay, as an example. In other words, something that's logical within the construct of reason, right? So if your thing is some kind of reasonable thing, akin to modern philosophy, right? You have some kind of, maybe it's John Locke or Hobbes or whatever, and you have your way of thinking that's kind of rational, if you will. It bottoms out as well. So let me put it this way. Well, why did the apple fall from the tree? Okay, why did the apple fall from the tree? In other words, we're asking why questions, right? And we're looking at reasons, right? And you can construct some kind of mathematical, geometric type reasons, okay, for all kinds of things. So let's go straight to mathematical physics, and let's not bother with the murky waters of human beings, right? And I'm telling you that it will bottom out to a how. So the apple falls from the tree because the earth is there. Well, why? Well, the mass of the earth, this gravitational constant, divided by the square of the distance between them, the inverse square law, the further apart they get, the weaker the force. Well, why? Well, because then comes in Einstein, right? Einstein comes in and he says, well, because mass puts a curvature on space-time. The bigger the mass, the bigger the curvature. It's kind of like a well, right? All the other masses around it kind of fall into the well of this other mass. Well, why? Well, because that's just how it is. At some point, it's just going to be, well, that's how mass is. That's how space-time is. Stop asking me why space-time curves around mass and energy. Please. When you have a reason, it's going to bottom out into a that's just how it is. Okay? That's going to be your bottom. But find that bottom though. Okay? Find the bottom. Don't stay up there at it falls because the earth is there. No. Get all those ways, all the mechanisms, the hows. Get all the hows till you get to that's just how space-time and mass is. Let me get a 1 in the chat, ladies and gentlemen, because this one may be abstract. Not everybody is familiar with, but gravity is one of those stories. Even if you never studied physics before, we all know the story, right? Newton, apple falling, comes up with these equations, blah, blah, blah. Einstein came back and modified the mechanism more, talking about the curvature of space-time, so on and so forth. Let me get a 1 in the chat if it is clear what I'm saying, that at the end of the day, you're still just going to end up with a how. That reason does not tend to answer why questions. It just tells you how at the end of the day. Okay? It tells you this is how it is. All right? And for those in here, I will get to you. Okay, I'll get to you in a second. Let me just kind of go through this real quick. Right? So I'm saying that you need to bottom out. Okay, you need to bottom this stuff out. Appeal to authority, that's a bottom. Okay, find that bottom. Appeal to reason, it'll tend to bottom out into a how, because reason is not going to answer your why questions. Okay, that's not how it works. Okay, and then appeal to tradition, this will tend to bottom out into reason. Why? Because, hey, what's this tradition for? The best way to explain the tradition is to kind of tie it to some reason. Okay, it is good for the survival of the tribe. And yes, it's a little wonky and there's some kind of artistic stuff attached to it. But really, the reason we're doing it, the reason we jump around through these little brooms here or whatever, is for this and that. And then the society, so we can survive. And then you go back to the reason side, and then that's just going to bottom out into well, that's just how it is, right? Because you can keep on asking, well, why do we want to survive? And why? And you're just, well, because DNA just likes to propagate itself, and that's just how it is, right? So the appeal to tradition is going to go back to reason. I think that's the best path for tradition to go. Otherwise, it's just, well, that's because how it is, right? It can go back to reason. I think that's a better path to go than authority, right? Because appeal to tradition can also go back to authority and say, well, it's because the first emperor came down from the volcanic ash and told us to do this, right? It could go to that too, right? But it's better that it goes to a reason. And then the reason just bottoms out into, well, that's just how it is, okay? So appeal to charisma, okay? Because Hitler told me. Because this crazy guy, right, that came from the mountaintop with the tablets said so. Some kind of charismatic leader said so. This is another place that tradition, as a matter of fact, this is where tradition tends to come from. And let me see over here. Tradition also tends to come from a charismatic leader. In other words, somebody, okay, or perhaps a group of people, let's say Pythagoras or whatever, they have some kind of they're charismatic. They form a group. They form a cult. Right? And then 100 years down the line, what that person taught now becomes tradition. It doesn't have to be a bad person. What I mean is, you could take Jesus to be that charismatic leader, right? And then millennia down the line, it becomes a tradition, Christianity. Whatever it is, right? Charisma tends to be that kind of turning point where somebody comes in and flips the script, and then it becomes tradition later. So, and then that tradition then breaks down into maybe some kind of a reason and da 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 da. But the point is, you need to find a bottom. And there are these different kinds of bottoms that are out there. And I don't want to get too heady with it, okay? But what does it come down to, okay? You need to find your faith, okay? Or you need to decide you're going to fall through the trapdoors into nihilism. You choose. Because you're always going to go down to that place, and the faith of science is just, well, that's how it is. I have faith in the method. I have faith in my epistemological tools. I set it up in a certain way where I'm going to take my senses for a given. I'm going to take logic also for a given. I have certain metaphysical presumptions and meta-logical presumptions, and that is my faith. I'm going to have faith that life is good. In other words, why bother? Why do anything? Okay? If I'm going to stand, I'm not going to fall through the cracks into nihilism, presumably. And I know that's a negative vision of nihilism, but it doesn't have to be a bad thing. But if I'm going to stand on something, I need to realize I'm standing on that thing based on faith. I'm standing on it based on the proposition that I believe that it is worth it. Why do I wake up in the morning, and why do I have to keep this relationship, and why do I have to work for my kids, and why? And you go through all this kinds of dance and everything. And at the end of the day, it all boils down to a question. Is reality good, worth it, or not? Am I going to be like Cain and be resentful at reality and say, you know what? I'm not getting what I want. And these women out here don't like short men. And right? And I'm gonna be like, to hell with it all, right? Or I'm gonna be like, it's still fundamentally good. That is faith. And whether you're coming from the tradition, charisma, authority, reason, it all bottoms down or bottoms out to faith, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, this is a hypothesis, okay? I'm not making any kind of wild, as I said, we're not sitting here with Scotch having an 8-hour conversation where we can get deep and where we can really be challenged, cross the T's, dot the I's, and so on and so forth. This is a rough sketch, okay? Trying to lay out the landscape, okay? So the first person to arrive here was the last polymath. And then after that, we'll go to Lion Legal, and I believe I see Dr. Thunder. So what you got for us, the last polymath?
What's up, Ike? So,
how's it going, sir?
yeah, it's going good. It's going good. So, yeah, you kind of hit onto various different axioms on why. I'll see if I can find an axiom to expand from. But the why is so inculcated in everything that we do that it kind of even drives our our external validations. For example, in the chat, I was talking about how, let's say, many people lose their faith, not because of the actual faith itself in this metaphysical abstract creation, or rather creator known as God, but the way that the group that has now become its own existence interacts with that belief in that metaphysical abstraction that is God. Then, because of that consistencies, based on how they project how things should be, not how things are, but how it should be, then that inconsistency leads to their ego death, because they're now saying, okay, so this is not what I believed in. So actually what they do is they create a perfect crystalline structure in their minds of what things should be, and they project it as if the should and the is at the same time. They commit the Bertrand Russell fallacy of ought to is, or is it is to ought? No, is to ought.
Is all, yeah, is all fallacy. Yeah.
Now the thing is, if like you said, if you could figure out the landing strip, I was raised this way. This is my tradition. This is my culture. This is what we like. For example, there was a debate by a Kenyan president and CNN anchor. The CNN anchor said, "Why don't you allow these alphabet type practices to come into your country?" The guy said, "But this is not our culture. This is not a problem in our country at this time. When and or if it will be, then we will revise this." So she was trying to project how, from her own mind, how things should be, but he gave a very grounded level response, which is, no, this is just not what we want to do. He didn't fall for the whole moralistic argument of, well, you should do this. He simply said, no, we don't have to do this. And he accepted that landing strip as if, yeah, this is culture. Because a lot of times people tend to want to make it seem as if culture isn't important. Culture is important because it's the social fabric that actually creates the wise for many people.
100%. Yes, I like that. So because people in this modern day, say this real quick and then we'll go to Lion Legal, are apt to go to some kind of reason, right? Like, oh, well, isn't it reasonable that you should allow this because of these reasons? And then now, if this guy fell for that, he will have gotten into some kind of a weird little dance there, right? But he found his ground and said, this is where I'm putting this. This is the shelf that I'm laying this on. And I don't have to go over there to that other bookshelf you're trying to get us into, because that bookshelf is also just based on some other faith, if you will.
Right.
So a lot. Go ahead.
And also the other reason itself doesn't even go to the extremities of the wise or even house. It itself also creates a hierarchical distribution. So, for example, you might say, I don't like the fact that in Yulin province in China, every year there is a dog meat festival. Now, you might try to create a meta why and say, well, it's not because they eat dogs necessarily, it's because they torture the dogs. But the truth is, even if they didn't torture the dogs, you would still not want them to eat dogs because you think a dog is better than a chicken. But you yourself are committing that same fallacy of eating an animal that has feelings, and you're trying to make a pseudo-logical demarcation between them. So ultimately, even if you go that path, you will reach a point whereby you just say, no, this is just where we're going to stop. An axiom has to be drawn at some point, and you have to be confident in that axiom that it is acceptable.
One quick question, then go to Lion Legal, okay? An axiom has to be drawn at some point. It reminds me of Nietzsche talking about, well, we have to create our own values. And do you think people are capable of doing this?
Generally, I don't think people can create their own values because they have to have that kind of real-time thinking and feedback response. So they have to, and unfortunately, that's not a common trait for humans. We tend to operate on some form of programmed responses. So the few of us can actually create our values. For example, I don't necessarily adhere to the social landscape values. I create my own abstract. For example, I'll make it simple. Some of my friends, when they see me, they think that I'm immoral sometimes because I don't care about people's feelings in the moment. What they fail to realize is I actually care about their feelings in a more quantitative scale. If I see a friend getting fat, especially if she's a girl, but boy too, I will tell them that they're getting fat, and I'll ask them if there's a problem, even if it's going to cause them pain in that moment, because I know if they get to a point whereby the fat is too extreme, that it causes them emotional turmoil and inability to lose it in the future, that would even be worse for them than the momentary feeling of pain I cause them now. So initially, some people might think I'm immoral for causing that pain, but I'm actually saving them a much bigger pain in the future. So I create my own value structure of, no, I'm not doing anything wrong. This has actually got a reason behind it, and I accept the fact that I am going to be the bad guy in that moment.
100%. So, Mr. Lion Legal, welcome, sir. What you got for us?
By the way, the reason I came in and out of the chat is because I wasn't sure if my audio was actually working. It's not because I'm impatient. Yeah, and in addition, was the previous speaker Kaizo? Is that you, or that's a different person?
Well, it depends. This is Storyville.
yeah. I thought it was Kaizo, so I guess you switched up the name. All right. I agree with Kaizo's point. I think that it's difficult for a person to say what they would do if they had the resources and they had achieved great success. As far as Maslow's theory of happiness, he states that you have to go through all of the phases before you reach self-actualization. So you have to obtain security, obtain love, happiness, obtain the respect and status of your peers. And 90% of people on earth are not at that stage, even more, probably. 90% of people, even more. And that includes everybody listening to this now. Is everybody here a billionaire? Have they achieved all of the financial success that they would like to see in their life? That, in the Bible, it says that, blessed is the man who leaves an inheritance to his children's children. Is everybody here at that stage too? So until you obtain the success that you envision obtaining in this life, it's difficult to now step to that stage of self-actualization, which means essentially achieving the highest quality of action and ambition that exists in life beyond mere self-preservation or self-interest. So rather than fame, fortune, things of that sort, what comes after that? That is self-actualization, the highest order of achievement. I think that there are some people who, even if they have not achieved wealth, success, understand what that is. There are some people who do that, and probably some of it comes in an adherence to, like, religion, for example, and understanding that wealth is not everything. Material possessions are not everything. There was an example of a person who was held, hostage before, and the hostage taker was going around asking people, "Are you a Christian? Are you not?" They knew that person did not like Christians, so they said, "No, I'm not." But one person said they were, and they came to harm because of that. A person like that, to me, is an example of a person who understands their true beliefs, so much so that even in the way of harm, they're prepared to face the consequences to state that they believe in something, and that is what their identity is. But those people are very, very rare, which is understandable because it's human nature to want to protect yourself and to want to obtain like material possession.
Good. So the example that Kaizo gave about the Kenyan president talking about, culture, I like how you broke it down to say, well, yes, it is possible to. So what I hear you saying is, if you had everybody getting to that billionaire status, then perhaps we'll have a larger cohort of people that can possibly kind of get to this higher level, but that, generally speaking, it's still a small percentage, right? Yeah. It's still a small percentage. Some people don't need to get to billionaire status in order to get there. But
exactly.
if you remove all the, and I tend to at least see I agree with the shape of the argument that, yes, there are other pressures and so on and so forth, right? Blind spots in terms of our lower needs, if we were to call it lower, right? Then that will be forming blind spots so that we cannot see the bigger picture. Like, and that's why I gave that example in the beginning. I said, if you are in an island with all the resources that you could possibly dream of, what would you do? In other words, and what would be your why at that point? And I think that that's a good mental exercise to have. Let's go to Dr. Thunder in the house. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I would like to ask something. Have you noticed something? When people become billionaires, have you noticed one thing that a lot of them do and have in common at that point? What did they say that they would like to do after they've already got the money?
They like giving it back.
Boom, exactly. That's the thing. So until they get to that stage, who would say that, oh, I'd like to give away my money? Exactly. So it shows that they've already reached that stage. Then they want to step over it and they say, oh, now I'd like to give back. Now I'm so philanthropic. I want to help the world. But until they got to that stage, was that same ambition there? Because once they get there, they understand material positions cannot a empty heart make whole.
Yeah. I like the Yoda talk. Dr. Thunder, what you got for us?
I would like to digress somewhat, if that's okay.
Oh, that's fine.
So I was kind of using the chat to take notes of things that you were saying during your presentation that caused certain ideas to appear. One thing I didn't write in the chat, though, was, and this is a real kind of rubber on the road kind of thought. So, as an artist, and this is a metaphor, could be a microcosm for, or could be a, you're going to see this sort of phenomena, I think, all over the place. So, as an artist, the question is, if you're trying to be true to yourself, but can't seem to sell enough stuff to make a living, is it a good idea to sell out in order to have a broader, a broader impact, albeit it wouldn't be the impact that you would actually want? And once you got to a certain amount of fame, you would either have to continue in the charade, or you could discontinue. And well, I guess I made enough money now. Now I'm going to do what I always really wanted to do, right? So this is this like age-old issue, and it seems to be somewhere between this. So you're sort of intrinsic, as you're framing it, and extrinsic, right? Because this is a big problem.
If you don't mind pausing there, because I'm sure you have things to add and to that and more, but I would like to address this question to the other panelists, starting with Kaizo, right? Or what's your name these days? The last polymath. So, artist, okay? It also relates to what Lion Legal said about the religious person, right? And you're going to stick to it, get your head chopped off, or stick to it, not sell anything, go broke? Or are you going to do something perhaps more akin to what the last polymath, I'm addressing this to you now, what you said earlier, which is, I'm going to add another layer. I'm going to say, you know what? I'm going to go and sell so that I can then da 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 da. In other words, do the opposite of what he said. Do you think it's possible? Do you think that perhaps you will be tainted by the fact that you went to go? Oh, will you be strong enough? What do you have to say about that, sir? Are you muted?
Right. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So this is actually, I think just in correction, Dr. Thunder, what you said wasn't digression. It actually was perfectly in line with what Lion Legal said. Actually, it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Okay, this is a good question. I have thought about this. So now I'm going to give the philosophical nature, then I'll give the practical nature. So in terms of let's say your actually, I have actually thought about this, right? Now by I'm just saying an abstract version of me. So for example, I have learned the Shahada, the declaration of faith in Islam, right? So Ashhadu, I know the declaration of faith. Now, what this means is when I go to certain countries in parts of East Africa or the Middle East, and myself partly being somewhat related to Christian-esque ideologies, if I am met with some type of person that is anti-Christian-esque person and is pro-extremist in that other religious aspect, I have already actually learned the Shahada in order to, if I'm in that situation, actually pretend that I am that other thing so that I can not have my head chopped off, for example. So I have already demarcated these kinds of issues. Now, you could say that I am doing wrong, especially if I'm planning it. And if God exists, of course, he would punish me. And that is true. However, what I like to be logical, right? If God, if you cannot be saved simply by acting, you have to believe it, then I cannot be condemned simply by also acting, because that's exactly what I'm doing there. I am simply acting. I'm pretending. Now, you could say that I'm lying, which is a sin, but I am not denying Jesus because I have to actually believe it internally to deny Jesus. So that's my reasoning. Now, of course, right.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. Because okay. So the profession of something versus quote unquote true belief, right? Versus what I say, that kind of a thing. Okay. Now, Lion Legal, what do you have to say? I guess you already you just gave the story, right? Or well, that person that said yes, I believe, and got their head chopped off. You did not necessarily say that that's what you would do. But let's take it away from the extreme, or you could stay at that extreme, or you could answer in the way it was posed by Dr. Thunder, which is just something simpler, like selling more maybe crappy popular art. Mr. Lion Legal, what would you do?
Was the question, do artists sell bad art until they get tired of doing that and then stop? What was the question? Sorry, can you rephrase it?
Is it the question always exists, similar to the question of, am I going to stay true to my faith and say, yes, I believe, and get my head chopped off? Similarly, am I going to stay true to my art, even though it's not selling much? Or do I go and sell popular art, even though I know perhaps it's crap, until I get to a certain level, and then maybe I switch, that kind of a thing? What will you do?
Okay.
Or what do you have to say about that?
Here's the problem. In order for you to effect great change, you have to be popular. You have to be known. A lot of people who have core values and stick to them. Okay, for example, a philanthropic person, would anybody agree that to have that ideology is great? However, if you had that ideology and you had the financial resources, wouldn't you be able to affect greater change? Wouldn't you be able to now build hospitals, to now give kids education, to now to now do a lot of these great things once you've got the resources? So the idea that it's good to just stick to your principles, to never compromise. That's where pragmatism comes in, and you see the most effective politicians are the consummate pragmatists, because they understand that if they simply stick to ideology, they will never, ever, ever progress. They will not achieve anything at all, because they're...
I have a...
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, were you...
Yeah.
It
Kaiser,
seemed. Yeah, go ahead.
I
Were you
think
going to add something? Or Lion Legal, you can wrap up, and then let's see. And then Dr. Thunder, I know I interrupted you. We'll get back to you, but it was an interesting thing that you brought back up, which was already brought up before. So,
okay. I think the last polymath
yeah.
said that he wanted to ask me something.
Yeah, Mr. Polymath, what are you going to ask Lion Legal something?
Right. So, Lion. So, what's more important in the grand scheme? Is it your own internal balance or equilibrium, or is it the actual the projection that you say that you want to do because it's good in the external world? So what I mean is, for example, is it important to actually help starving children and help them leave that situation, or is your motivation and the purity of it more important? So is it the unscrupulous billionaire that gives millions to charity to avoid taxation, or is it the the Mother Teresa? I'm assuming Mother Teresa is good. I'm not going to go into the controversy. Is it the Mother Teresa type that apparently goes and has his feelings, starts small orphanages, etc., etc.? So what's more important here in the grand scheme?
Let me ask you this and answer this honestly. If you had a child that was in a very bad position, there was a philanthropic billionaire that donated the money. He doesn't really care about the money. He doesn't care whether the money reached the child or not. But it helped that child's condition turn from a poor condition into a very healthy one and a fruitful one. Which one would you prefer? Would you prefer that, there's a kind man in your town who shows you appreciation, but cannot do a single thing for you, or a billionaire that has now given the money and been able to change the living conditions of lots of people? Which one do you think is better on a personal level?
Right, Lion. I think what just happened in this discussion is now we know the differences. You are more externally motivated. Dr. Thunder is more internally motivated.
No. I didn't say me. I'm just talking from an abstract level.
Right. I understand. But I mean, as in that line of reasoning is more of an external motivation. And then Dr. Thunder's question as well, the way it kind of seemed to be more about the self and whether it's more internally, and mine is more dualistic. So in my case, I would say yes, I would prefer the billionaire who's unscrupulous. However, what I would also like to add is that I'll still try to make sure that the motivations are clean, because from a principle perspective, if we have more clean motivations, generally when they do get that money, there'll be more clean things done that affect greater change. So I would apply both.
I disagree. Why would you care where the money comes from, as long as it helps a loved one of yours that could have been in dire straits?
Because of
hold on a second, Kaizo and Lion Legal. It remains to be demonstrated, Mr. Polymath, that perhaps if you had more clean motivations, that over the long haul, right, or over time or space, that there will be better outcomes. But I get the argument, right? But the empirical side of me is like, okay, fair hypothesis, and I see where you're coming from. You're trying to go to dualistic mode where you're like, I'll take the money from the unscrupulous millionaire, but I'll also preach for people to have pure good in their heart, because I think that over the long haul, there will be more. Am I correct in that? And if so, then Mr. Lion Legal, you see where he's coming from, right? He's playing both sides of the fences, right?
Yeah, Ike, you are incredibly astute, and you got the issue down pat. You completely understood it. That is exactly the issue, and that was not even the question. The question was, which one is better? But the last polymath took both sides of the argument.
Yeah, and we have to go back to Mr. Go ahead, finish.
So if this was the test, how would you be graded?
Yeah, you're a very legalistic kind of person. Makes sense. It's in your name. So, Mr. Dr. Thunder, I'm sorry for the interruption, but you know why I did that. So please go ahead.
How dare you call me Mr. Thunder? No, anyhow. All right, we're having fun. Okay, so I wanted to go back. Okay, so I wanted to. I think my position is more Kaizo's position, in that I think I want to see. I would try to straddle those. I would try to find a balance some kind of way. But if I got totally in the corner, I would say that I don't know that there's a way. Well, um, in a sense, I feel like the only way, the only thing that you can control is your honesty, your authenticity to what it is, to yourself, so to speak. And because you can't really control how the world receives your art. There have been artists where all they did was hyper focus on themselves, on pleasing themselves, and it was revolutionary and made significant, changes. I don't know about billions of dollars of change. We're talking about art, right? Okay, so I did want to say that, but there were a couple things earlier that were said I wanted to mention. So, and this also has to do with motivations. I think that the simpler and clearer your motivations, the easier it will be to achieve fulfillment. So if you have a sort of long and convoluted list of okay, well, I think I'm doing this for this reason, and I think I'm doing it for that reason, and this other reason also, then it's going to be much more difficult to feel like you achieved something. You're not going to feel fulfilled. And when beginning down a particular path, it's important to decide what will be considered a success. Otherwise, success, even if it's reached, won't be perceived.
Great point.
You have all these folks that, other people admire them. Let's look at Charlie Parker. Okay. Charlie Parker, he changed everything as far as music, any kind of popular music, anything jazz, anything commercial music. It has been dramatically changed and altered by Charlie Parker. Right. But, he died in his mid-30s and basically drank himself to death. He was a drug addict for much of his life, chasing women and drugs. Basically that sort of is what ended his life. Now, there's no way that he would have been able to know that his art would have that kind of profound impact. And whatever his list of goals or plans were for his life, how how could anybody foresee that would be that successful? But because you can't really know that kind of dramatic impact, other people look on Charlie Parker and say, man, what would it have been like to be Charlie Parker? Well, Charlie Parker was miserable. That's why he was drinking and all the other stuff that was going on. He was miserable. So
let me
he
ask you
had
this.
achieved at the highest level, but he obviously was unable to achieve that deep fulfillment.
Yep.
Yeah.
Is there misery, Dr. Thunder, associated with not staying true to yourself? And over maybe anecdotally, or if you can look at an individual, or you can say, well, spread over, you kind of look at it like a utilitarian point of view. Is it more miserable to stick to your whatever, or to betray yourself, if you will.
I can answer
Presumably,
that. Yes. One word.
Okay,
yes.
what's the? It's more miserable to do what?
To lie to yourself.
To betray. To lie to yourself. Okay.
Time. Yeah.
Dr. Thunder, do you? I mean, I could assume that I know your answer, but what is your answer to that? Is there is misery associated with it, and which is more miserable?
Well, I don't know if I want to directly answer that. I think I'll answer that by saying I just had this conversation with my wife about I think so my wife is an extrovert and I'm an introvert. My wife has done hundreds. She's a dancer, she's a choreographer, and she has high people skills, and communication skills, and she's able to motivate people at a level that I've not seen many people able to do this. She just has that as a natural skill set, and therefore her productions that she puts on, I mean, every single one I've seen have always been extremely well attended. Right? People, they come and she makes certain decisions that are deliberate because she won't accept something as being successful unless it's attended by a certain number of people, right?
Okay.
Now that is not the way that I see it, right? So I am fine as long as I'm getting video of a concert performance that I do. If 10 people show up, it doesn't matter. I'm going to play the same way anyway, and then I will also have the recording, and then I can use the recording to maybe cut it up and create some other videos or something. So it'll sort of have a life of its own after everything is over. And our conversation was something like, can you, have you thought about doing, something like X, Y, and Z? And it was something where she was trying to get me to, well, if you did something a little more pop, then, then you'd get more of an audience. And then if you have more of an audience, then you can decide at any time that you really want to do this other thing, right? So you see that there's sort of an organic, So you see there's sort of an organic, there was a reason why I brought that up on the panels, because it's a kind of a recent kind of conversation. But that's not really an answer, but I think maybe you understand what I mean.
Well, I think it's an answer. Well, maybe it's my interpretation, but okay. So Lion Legal said, yes, that it's more miserable to be untrue. You answered the question using your story. I'm sorry.
Well, it's not just me. Any psychologist will tell you a lot of issues will come from your assessment of your own self-worth. If you feel that you don't have the resources, you don't have the ability to do what will elevate you to a higher state of fulfillment and enjoyment, obviously you know that you have not achieved your full capacity, which is self-determination and control of your job, your finances, and your interests. If you have to constantly be beholden but to some organization or something over you, you will not be happy. That's why Dave Chappelle had a very successful show. They offered him $50 million. $50 million. $50 million. And he said, no, I'm not going to take this. He went to South Africa, hid away, and people said, this guy's psychotic, this guy's crazy. 10 years later, Netflix offered him 60. And in his community of comedians, he is the most respected. He's on the level of Seinfeld and Chris Rock. They're the most respected comedians in existence right now. He did not compromise. However, I don't advise people to do what he did because he, in my opinion, he's lucky. He's very lucky, but he shows that you can actually win doing what he did and not compromising. And if you do it that way, you will be intact.
I wanted to bring up that element of luck that you mentioned because I want to say that because you can always find, the fallacy about not looking at the graveyard, right, of the people who did what he did and died or whatever, right? Like we tend to look at the successful. It's a typical kind of thing. Fine, I like that you pointed that fact out. And while Dr. Thunder was saying what he was saying, which I tend to artistically, I tend to be with Dr. Thunder. But, let me not say, it's not a but, it's a and. I'm in a situation where I can play many different games at the same time. And I can kind of foresee that, okay, if I stay true to this one and it fails, then all these other ones will work out, right? I'm not the kind of person where it's like, and as I say, this is a luck thing. In other words, this is a personality type. I can't take credit for this. I have a few tricks. I'm not a one-trick pony. So I can afford to be true to all the tricks because I know that over time, one will work out, right? And then I can pay for the one with the other, that kind of a thing, right? So I stay true to the art. I stay true to the everything else because I have these number of tricks. Now, if I had just one trick, right, then who knows, right? I'm just being honest, right? I'm being honest because I don't know because I'm not that person, right? But the polymath, what would you have to say, okay, about what, and I know it's the same question we've been going around, right? So, but given the last thing that Dr. Thunder said about the conversation that he had with his wife, do you have anything to add to that?
Right. Yeah, actually, I will take a similar approach to you in this one. Actually, that's why I became a polymath. It's so that I can play multiple games and still be true to myself across multiple planes, so that I'm not restricted to, okay, well, I am this person. This is what I like to do. This is what makes me happy. It happens that most things make me happy. In fact, just living. So what I've done is I've created a very low complexity reason for being, which is just being. In fact, the video that you made previously, which is just because, that's actually my word. That's my why. It's just because. And because I have that just because, I'm able to not be kind of put down in this sort of situations. Now, there are situations I wouldn't like to involve myself. For example, involving myself in cannibalism. That is something that will take an ego death in order to get to that point. And I mean in situations where it's dire, like being stuck in a desert, your friend died, right? Not in a pleasuristic, hedonistic way. So something like that will still cause me to not so-called be true to myself because I haven't accepted that ego death. I still like to think of myself a certain kind of way in certain areas. I am at least not this kind of person in a few ways, but this kind of helps me at least make sure that I'm not blowing by the wind in all directions. So it's more of a grounding. But that grounding itself isn't actually on ground, it's on water. And it is willing to move across the two-dimensional plane. It won't sink, which is good, but I'm willing to go either direction within X and Y. I'm not too focused.
I would like to ask you something, actually.
Yeah.
Last polymath. Yes, you are quite erudite, and a lot of your arguments are pretty cogent, too. What are your favorite books? What are the most impactful books that you've read?
The most impactful book I've ever read in my life is of Deconstruction by Derrida, Jackie Derrida. That book explains everything from philosophy of the ages up to human motivations, power games. He breaks everything down to the point that everything is a power game. The fact that I say that, for example, men and women should be paid, should be treated equally, but there shouldn't be so-called economical pay, meaning you shouldn't just pay everyone the same. That's a power game, because what I'm doing there is I'm saying, okay, I'm pretty good at logic, or I'm pretty good at working and doing this kinds of thing. I want to create this hierarchy whereby people like me with traits like me can succeed. But then I'm going to exclude the people from the other traits. And everybody does this in all areas of life. So that book really helps break down everything to a point whereby you realize everything is just a power game. So the
What's
individual.
the name of the book, sorry? Deconstruction.
Of Deconstruction by Derrida. It's a really powerful book.
Okay. Okay, and it talks about the gender pay gap, and you disagree that there's a pay gap.
Sorry,
if I know the book you're talking about, it's before these arguments of, if you're talking about Derrida, it was before.
Okay, right.
It's an old.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I might check out the book. Yeah. The last thing I'll say, because I think I have to jump off quickly, is that I think in order to, or one thing that can conceptualize self-actualization is no longer simply trying to obtain things which make you happy and give you joy, but actually thinking about the future generations that you have and improving their lives or improving the lives of people around you. I think once you're at that level, that is the self-actualization level, trying to ensure that humanity is improved by your presence, and especially those that come after you, your posterity, your scion, essentially your children's children. I think that is self-actualization. And it's been great to be on the panel, and thank you, Ike, and the last polymath, and Dr. Thunder too.
Always a pleasure. Lion Legal. You guys
check out my
check
YouTube channel too.
Check out his YouTube channel, ladies and gentlemen. So, Dr. Thunder, you dropped off for a second there, and I don't know if you heard, what we kind of said, but basically, the last polymath and I were kind of saying that we get it, and you probably are this kind, right? Where I don't see you anyways as a one-trick pony kind of guy. So we were saying that, and to the Eddie said, nothing wrong with one-trick ponies. Obviously, I wasn't saying anything was wrong with them, but that it is easy to be true to yourself when you have a few tricks, because I can be true to all these because I know that if one fails, or if I come to some kind of a bad end, if you will, as a result of one being true in one end, another one will work out, or the third one will work out, or I can kind of sustain and balance myself through time until they all work out, that kind of a thing, right? So what do you have to say to that? Is it not the case that if you have a couple of tricks to play, it is easier for you to say, you know what, I'm going to stick to my guns? But if you only had one trick, maybe it's not so easy to say that.
Yeah, it's a sort of a game of numbers, right? So if you have a lot of things that you can do, then if something is not financially viable and something else is, you don't have to stop the thing that is not financially viable. So for instance, I'm an amateur bodybuilder, right? So I can continue to do that because I am also a tenured professor, right? In a completely different discipline, right? I'm a music professor, right? So I don't have to make money with bodybuilding. And some of this is stuff that I talk to my students about frequently, is having a diverse enough skill set, because you don't know what's going to pay your bills, and frankly, there are a lot of talented musicians these days. And so you must be able to do things at a high level, and you must be able to do a lot of things at a high level, not just one thing. And so I've kind of spread that out into a lot of different areas. Obviously teaching is a different discipline than performing. And then, I've had a YouTube channel for a long time, and I've had, interest in, rhetoric and philosophy and Christian apologetics. And now I've been more involved in the manosphere, and I find these interesting connections, but none of that stuff really has to make any money, right? I can just do it because I'm interested in it, because it's fulfilling, because my check is already coming this other way. So, yes.
Let me do a quick. Let me restate some of the things that was kind of set up in the past. And for those people whom are just coming in, okay, or whom came in later, okay, and he supports Trump. Oh, that's a funny comment. Okay, so basically, what are we talking about, okay? We're talking about why bother. We're talking about why, okay? Because in order to handle the how, in order to handle all the issues and the problems and the misery that you're going to face in life, it is important to have a why, they say. And it turns out to be true, and I agree. The problem is, what is your why? And it is not something that can be easily determined or just picked up from a bookshelf. You can't just go listen to some charismatic teacher or, simply take it from some political leader or some particular authority or tradition and so on and so forth. And some people will tell you, oh, you need to work for something outside of yourself. But that completely ignores the fact that some of us are intrinsically motivated. And I remember very clearly, it was when I was still in college, taking this communications class, and there was this, teacher, typical professor type, typical liberal professor type, talking about service and how service is the highest order thing. She was going on, and I tried to understand. Okay, I tried, and they made us in this particular class, was a communications class. They made us do this kind of thing where it was like service to others, right? We were broken into groups and so on and so forth. And I know I'm digressing, but after I did it all, I still couldn't get it. Okay, I was like, this whole larger than yourself thing, I don't get it. Okay, like I don't get it, and I was thinking maybe there's something wrong with me, or maybe I'm a selfish bastard, which I am, but I'm not the only one is the point. In other words, you need to find out if you're intrinsically motivated or extrinsically motivated. You need to understand the pitfalls of intrinsic motivation versus extrinsic motivation. Pitfalls of being intrinsically motivated, yeah, you can become very selfish. Extrinsically motivated, however, you can be deceived and naive as to how easy it is to go out there and work the handles of the group, the society, or the external world. You can then become jaded, become resentful, feeling unappreciated, and so on and so forth. Okay, what is it that motivates you? You may think it's freedom, but something is blocking your view, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to run away from yourself, and you think that freedom and traveling and working where you want, that's what's going to give you satisfaction. But wherever you go, there you are. Okay, and then we went down to the basics. We said, look, you're going to need to go down to rock bottom. You're going to need to go down to the just because appeals to reason will bottom out. Okay, it's just going to be like, well, that's just how it is. Appeals to tradition will also bottom out into going to reason or authority or to charisma, right? And appeals to charisma, that is the birth of traditions, generally speaking. You need to find your rock bottom, and that generally speaking, the rock bottom is faith. That there is something worthwhile to this, and that there is nothing that will point, that you cannot find within this something that will point to why it is worthwhile. Okay, within existence, within life itself, you're not going to be able to find something that tells you why it is worthwhile, and that you simply have to go and find through the kinds of investigations following this map which you just laid out, what is your rock bottom, and stay there. Okay, and if it's authority and tradition, boom, you found that. If it's more of some kind of a ability to create your own values, some kind of version of nihilism, if you will, then go there. But the point is, this is not a simple thing, nor is it easy, and it needs to be done because it is important. And I just wanted to say that. And then Kaizo, the last polymath, did you have anything to add to what Dr. Thunder last said?
Yeah, I actually do that. So I'm not going to repeat what he said. I'll build from that. Okay. So one of the issues again with the collectivism thing as well, you also mentioned like the service to duty. The Kantian ethics, where it's like you have a duty to be part of this thing that you're part of. You have these responsibilities. This is a higher moral order or something, is that ultimately you have to know your own why, so that, or at least demarcate the whole way down, so that you don't get caught up in these false gods. I mean, this is actually when Christianity or any religion talks about false gods, it's talking about this. Is you have a shadow representation of what you should be your goal, and then when it doesn't work out for you, of course you have now believed in this collectivistic sentiment, and then of course it ends up killing your motivation because it didn't fulfill it. I'll give an example of a woman I know personally. Now, this woman grew up poor. She had 3 kids, but she worked really hard. Her husband was incredibly intelligent, but he fell into alcoholism. So she had to learn how. So she had been brought up all her life to kind of expect a man to take care of her. Now, she's intelligent, she is educated, but she had that kind of expectation, and she had believed in God, etc. Somehow things should work out. So when they didn't work out, she had that bitter pill to swallow. And what she did is she realized, okay, I do have to be independent at some level, and she became so. Now, slowly and slowly, she became richer. She fulfilled all the Maslow's, bottom layer needs, as Lion Legal was talking about. However, when she compares herself to her sister, who actually has 3 properties in good areas, so obviously money, she has had the same chances to get that money, is what I told her. But she used it to invest in setting up schools for kids. Now, she confused herself that she actually wanted to do it as a business. But what I've made her realize now is actually she just loves to give back to the community. That is what actually motivates her. So with her sisters, can't quite understand why she's involving herself in bad business deals. But for her, it is because that she wants to help. And it's not just, I guess, like what Lion Legal talked about in the pragmatic, I'm actually helping. It's the fact that she's doing it. The fact that she's using her hands to actually create a system, even if she's losing money every month for 2 years, it is that involvement that she's making a change. So sometimes actually it is that low level ingrained, I am doing this, rather than it actually being productive in a metaphysical sense.
Mm-hmm. So it's like they're intrinsically motivated to do these things, which in their mind is externally productive. Even if it's not productive, they just like doing that kind of a thing, right?
Right.
That's rather interesting. Now, Dr. Thunder, if you could address what is asked here on the screen. Well, because we're talking about multiple tricks and so on and so forth, and they're asking a rather practical, pragmatic question. It's like, well, how does one get started on this trick? What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, so it's these are the kind of questions. Well, these are some of the questions that I maybe enjoy the most, because they're very rubber on the road and logistical and process and can be process oriented, So one of the issues I think that we have these days is that because there is so much pedagogy available for such a large variety of disciplines. I mean, for everything, there's a huge volumes and volumes of great information on how to become a great this or how to become a great that. There's this volumes and volumes. A challenge with that, and with the ease of access of information, I think it encourages people to become very mediocre at a lot of things and not deep at any one particular thing. And in order to be able to, in order to be able to master something at the level that it can sustain you while you pursue other interests in a way that doesn't create financial hardship, is you have to really spend that time developing whatever that particular skill is. Now, one reason why it actually is a benefit, not in a freak show way, like, hey, look at these little kids that can play the violin, not in that kind of way, but what actually is beneficial from starting a child at a young age is that they will have gotten to that sort of 10,000 hours, that critical mass of time, which is not a guarantee that they will make it's not a guarantee that they will make a a world changing, kind of impact, right? It's not a guarantee, but it is at least necessary to achieve that 10,000 hours. And you have to have at least a base amount of natural ability. So if you can have that natural ability, if you can get started early enough, and then you can achieve at a high level before a certain age, then it's going to open up basically the rest of your life to pursue whatever it is that you want to. And fortunately for me, my dad saw in me a certain natural ability, and I started when I was 6, and I was practicing a lot of hours every day. And and I was it's not even something I can take credit for, right? I was like possessed by it, like I was chosen by it. I don't remember ever making a decision to be a musician. It was just like, this is what it is. This is what I've been doing. I have all this time in now, and so it just seemed like this is where I need to go. And so I guess that's it. And it's not really a trick. It takes, it takes learning and figuring out what it is that you want to do at an early enough age, and then aggressively pursuing that, and you'll make mistakes and stuff won't go exactly the way you want to, but you stay committed to it and you stay driven as long as you have enough natural ability. If you don't have enough natural ability, you got to do something else. But if you have enough natural ability.
Do you start the other tricks?
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, some of them were a natural outgrowth. So teaching was a natural outgrowth of performing. Right.
So your answer is just be overflowing with talent, like Dr. Thunder and everything.
Well, no. Well, yes. Well, I mean, I think you have to have a knack for a particular thing in order to cite it as a trick, right? So that implies that there is some natural ability associated with it. I think you can find the things that you have natural ability in. You can discover other things that you're interested in that seem to be. So, for instance, dancers. Okay, so there's a shelf life on how long you can be a world-class dancer, right? Because it's very physical. So you get past a certain age, and you'll see that a lot of dancers transition into being teachers, right? And right, or athletes, they'll transition into being coaches, right? So they are related. They're not unrelated, but they are a different skill set. You do have to learn something else about it, so you can use what it is that you have that interest in to sort of suggest to you other things. And then I just go after everything with, full on intensity. It's like, if I really want to do something, I just go after it.
So let me I do agree with the trick aspect, and that's why when I was answering the question earlier, when I brought up this whole multiple tricks thing, and you had dropped, I did mention that some of it, I said, okay, this is me talking. I can't take credit for it because I know it's just natural that in addition to having tricks, I think that one of my tricks is that just like you said, you cannot help but do the music thing. I cannot help but do multiple things. Okay. I can't understand the whole focus and stay on it. It's like, no. For me, one of my tricks is no, I need to go bite something else. Okay. It's almost like spinning plates and it's like in order to balance, I just add more and spin faster. I'm doing some kind of centripetal, whatever, right? But you get what I'm saying. It's like, rather than just stop and be like, okay, well, it's like, no, I throw more in and spin even faster just because it just feels better. I like a little bit more of the chaos. So I agree with you on yes, you're going to need to have some tricks. Now, how do you get the first trick started? Definitely starting early is key. I would say that also, in addition, the perseverance is key in doing the multiple things, because what I've noticed, even in one of my things, let's say music, for example, okay, I've seen many people come and go within the musical circles that I kind of work in, even when I was doing hip hop back then, or now that I'm in reggae. You have all these people who come in, wild-eyed, bushy-tailed, they're like, I'm gonna make it happen, right? We got to do this, and they have this kind of impatience about them, and 9 times out of 10, they never have staying power because they're just too impatient. It's like you need at least 7 years. Okay. People talk about the 10,000 hour thing, and that's to be good at something, but just from a market perspective, to catch on, right? You're going to need to go from your garage to the, TGIF or the local school, then to the corner bar, and then you opened up from this one person, and then they said, hey, why don't you go on the road with us? And now you move from LA to Santa Barbara, and that process takes time. It's not going to happen in a month, right? Some people just don't have the staying power, and for me, I think it's because they're not intrinsically motivated. Okay, that's why I answered. There was a question that someone asked about, well, what's more powerful, intrinsic or extrinsic motivation? And I just think intrinsic is more powerful, even though I know that I have a bias. And I've noticed these people who come out and they're like, I want to be at this position. I want to be here. And they start looking at all these external factors, like, oh, we have to organize this and we have to build this structure. Almost similar to what my last stream, when I was talking about structure being overemphasized. And I'm like, you gotta at least have people that are willing to pay you to come into their bar regularly to play the gigs before you start talking about the A&R and signing this deal and having all this kind of structural, for me, like extrinsic and, in other words, busy work, the way I tend to see it, busy work type of focus. And I've seen that even in one of my endeavors, that if you're not patient and just stick with it, if you don't stick with it, it's not going to go anywhere. So yes, start early, but make sure you stick with it. Stick with all of them. Keep going. Now, the music for me is not paying my bills, but because I've stuck with it, I can call certain people. I have certain people in my Rolodex now because I've performed with them. I've demonstrated my ability and my talent in that regard, right? That now I know all these different artists, these, studio people and so on and so forth, and they respect me. I can feature them, they can feature me, that kind of a thing. And hence I'm getting my satisfaction that way, right? Still, but some people are like, oh, it's not paying the bills yet, I'm going to drop it. But for me, it was never about paying the bills. It was, I just like doing this thing and it just never stopped. So, Mr. Polymath, still with the question, okay? How does one start these tricks? You said at some point, that is why I became a polymath. You decided one day, like, okay, become a polymath. Well, tell us how that worked, how that happened, and how you did it.
Right. Shout out to Eddie at Team. Okay, so I'd like to give a parallel of what Dr. Panda said about some of these limits as well. So, okay, so it's true that there are some boundary limits to some things that exist in physical space. Acknowledging age, physical factors, it's all true. In the NBA, for example, there's only been one person taken at 27, over 25, and it's only for 1 week, a game, just who knows why they put him in the game. There are sort of pseudo hard limits to, even if you're very skilled, to how certain things work in nature. However, what I would like to say is there are ways to circumvent this. And this is when it comes to understanding the natural order isn't actually necessarily a strong order. It is just chaos that has been moved into a particular way of being that we tend to respect. It's almost the so-called natural order. In some ways, it's almost like the social order. It is strong, but it's still lucid. And I'll give you a perfect example. So Dr. Thunder mentioned that, of course, skill, talent is important. And yes, to an extent, I agree. However, if you look at modern musicians, right, people like Kanye West, Rihanna, etc., these people, you would not, for example, Kanye West sings sometimes. These people aren't singers. Rihanna isn't a singer. She's not Beyonce, right? Most so-called new age hip hop singer rappers are not actually gifted at singing. The vocal intonation isn't giving this melodious harmonies in your eargasmic experience. If you look at a lot of the guitarists as well, most of them are not the Jimi Hendrix going out there giving some very original thought way of playing with some interesting sounds, mixing diminished chords with blues. And most people aren't like that. Most people can still do things and excel in things at being average, but finding a slight knack in it. For example, if you realize that you can create music that is more rhythmically intertwining, you don't have to focus so much on that melodious aspect. You can just basically figure out the skill that you do have, which everybody has one, in any kind of field, and find a way, like a flavor that you add onto that thing that makes you exceptional. Coffee tastes horrible, but people like it because it tastes horrible. No one drinks coffee because it tastes like pineapple juice. So, right. So finding niche ways to kind of move in that circle will be good. For example, I tried to start guitar at 9, but we were kind of poor and I didn't want to make my parents pay for lessons. So I waited until I became old enough to be able to learn how to teach myself guitar. So I did. I spent countless hours practicing. And to be honest, I sucked in the beginning. I could barely make the guitar sound good, but I stuck to it. I continuously put myself through 2 hours every day for 2 years. And that kind of allowed me to reach a certain skill level. Then from it, what I did is I took a step back and I tried to understand how I can use these things that I'm learning from guitar in other things. So I learned how to extrapolate, and that's when I decided to become a polymath. I realized everything is the same. There is literally the same thread that goes across everything. Finding the similarities with everything allowed me to actually learn everything from that point at a relatively fast pace and relatively easily. So it took an awakening of mastering one skill. Then I was able to understand that I can master all skills, even if I wasn't necessarily talented in all things.
100%. So, so far, we have said, master one thing. Dr. Thunder gave the admonishment to start earlier. Yeah, definitely the earlier the better, right? And then I said consistency, and you also repeated the consistency, right? You stuck with the guitar even though you sucked. And then the third thing here is that once you find something, it was alluded to by Dr. Thunder, and I find it to be absolutely true as well, that once you master that one thing, the Miyamoto Musashi quote, the way you do one thing is how you do everything, or from one thing you can learn 1,000 things. Like, I mean, we don't live in some kind of weird universe where, the landscape just constantly keeps shifting. It's like, no, you can do one thing, you're going to find, the consistencies, right? So I definitely, I agree with that. Now, there is something here on the chat that I just wanted to point out to. And I never quite thought about it this way in terms of intrinsic versus extrinsic, but definitely men are kind of pushed to be more intrinsic. Well, for one thing, naturally speaking, distribution-wise, men are not as social, right, as women. So you would not expect a man to be out there trying to organize as much. It does seem to, it does have a feminine connotation to it. Secondly, because of the whole, you're a man, you need to be strong and take it kind of thing, that kind of thing also lends itself to some kind of a being more intrinsic and being intrinsically motivated. Pull yourself up by your bootstrap, type of mentality tends to be more of a masculine thing. And if you look at the political landscape, yes, women do tend to vote more for, shall we just say, collectivist type of approaches to governance and so on and so forth. Go ahead.
Right. Actually, this goes well in some things I've noticed in politics. For example, I've heard a lot of Black women specifically say something like, Black men don't support us. We're always supporting them. We're always marching for them, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What I've tried to explain to a lot of them is actually men in general don't get involved to the same extent in the socialistic, collectivistic tendencies. They're more likely to focus on particular things that they can feel like they can touch their hands with and move from that direction. So a lot of them feel, and this is actually another issue, I guess, with the intrinsic versus extrinsic, is when someone has one motivation, they project that motivation as if it's universal and that somehow it is the ideal. And when it's not met, if it's not reciprocated, it becomes something that then becomes tainting to that individual. So yeah, a lot of these women will feel that Black men are not protecting them, etc., or this isn't happening. But in reality, well, maybe to some extent, of course, everything is true, but the generalized stance isn't like that. It's just that is not their motivation. Men in general don't get involved in that kind of socialistic, collectivistic movement. They don't put that as if this is the end or this will solve our problems. They're more focused on other kind of intrinsic factors.
100%. And this is something that I also see, if you take it out of the male versus female context, I see it in the immigrant versus native context as well. And this may be maybe a East versus West thing, or it may just be simply immigrant versus native, right? The immigrant versus native, if we keep it in that context, will be that someone who is not a native will not be so much into the politics of the land, right? They came here for economics. They came here for certain reasons, right? To pursue certain opportunities. They're less likely to be marching. They're less likely to be agitating for anything other than that which they came for. Okay. And then there may be an East versus West thing in the sense that the West tends to be more political in the sense as in terms of agitating for rights, more rights, or the better implementation of the existing rights, making a more perfect union, that kind of a thing, whereby someone coming from, the jungle somewhere, no disrespect, is not into that. They're dealing with jungle type stuff, and they're more just like, oh, I'm a fox. I've been let into the hen house. I'm going to tear it up over here. I'm going to load up my bank account as much as possible. What march? What are you talking about? Right? So I've definitely seen it with regards to the both the gender thing, which I didn't really think about very much, but definitely on the immigrant thing, I've seen that. So, Kaizo, you, the last polymath, you have the last word, sir. Before I wrap this up and give a good summary, shout out to Chaos Rain in the house. What would you like to say? Okay, we're talking about why. Well, why bother? Okay, and we went through the whole thing, intrinsic versus extrinsic. We said that it's not easy. We talked about the pitfalls and so on and so forth. Okay, how would you wrap this up? Was there something else you wanted to add, or in a way wrap up everything you've been saying in a nice little bow? Go ahead.
Yeah. So okay. So someone mentioned that which is more powerful, extrinsic or intrinsic. I would say it's always the awareness of your motivation. So it doesn't matter about your motivation necessarily. It's the awareness and the boundary limits of that self awareness. If you're aware that you are stuck in external factors, you can at least put protection mechanisms so that you don't get kind of taken into it. A lot of mental illness, actually, especially let's say Black people in Western countries, is that, especially Native Black people, is that they feel that they're part of a social fabric. Then when they have an ego death, when they realize actually this is a tribalistic aspect, and they project that things are supposed to be equal, but they can't accept the realities that there are certain levels of demarcations on who will be preferred in certain regions. This does cause an ego death, and then of course it causes that individual to suffer because they're focusing on that external aspect. However, the awareness of it is actually what will allow this individual to be free and to be able to still win, because what they can do now is accept this, that they can't get that validation in that atmosphere but they can create their own atmosphere that they can get that validation. So ultimately, it's the awareness aspect that will lead the individual to actually fulfill the thing that they say that they're seeking. And in relation to everything else that we've said, I think in this case, finding out your psychological type is important. I think everyone should go do an MBTI personality test at 16personalities.com. This will allow you to kind of figure out, are you an introvert? Are you an extrovert? Are you an intuitive or are you a sensor? A sensory person is someone who focuses on the external validations of the world. This is how things are. An example would be someone like Kevin Samuels. He's an ESTJ, focusing on work, values, discipline, duties. And if you put all these things together, your life will move in a certain direction, building stable structures that you can rely on. Then an intuitive version of a similar personality type is Ike. He does value getting things done, but he has more of shoot this kind of chaotic, abstract thing, and then keep seeking that movement towards that direction. And the things that seem to be sticking, pursue them more, refine them more, and then extend from there. So of course, try to figure out who you are, what you are. This would then allow you to kind of start to create gradations on your limits. Also accepting certain things. For example, this intrinsic versus extrinsic things comes into this. Some people can't accept that they're average looking, for example. That's why that video, average at best, was triggering to a lot of people. Now, I'm not saying that, okay, now I want everyone to kind of understand what I'm saying here. Everyone is beautiful intrinsically, right? We are all beautiful intrinsically because we define our sense of self. We are all an island or a universe in each of ourselves. However, we do exist in a world of objects that are perceived in a generalized way, but not exactly by everyone. There is a statistical relation between the self and the external world. You don't need to accept what the external world imposes on you, but you need to be aware that there is an imposition by external factors that's related to your intrinsic factors. So if you believe yourself to be a great guitarist and you suck, according to many people, you can actually focus on the people that think you're amazing. So there are gradations and hierarchies that you can move within if you understand this. You don't have to be the best scientist if you move to a country where people don't understand science that much. You can actually be at the top of the hierarchy in that country. So I would preach awareness, because awareness kind of closes all the gaps, still allows an individual to kind of get some of what they want, to understand that actually what they want isn't even true. I have seen many times people called incels complaining that they can't find the opposite sex to find them attractive. Now, if these people understood the motivations that people have, they could actually overcome it. But some of them are stuck in the story of their own imposition that it should happen this way. They kind of want it to happen in a way that they perceive other people getting what they want, and they get caught into that loop, into that circle, and they become a slave to that externally prepared universe. So ultimately, I would say be self-aware enough to understand your strengths, limits, motivations, and be okay with it, and maybe go deep into your shadow enough to accept that for example, not everyone is going to be able to play the game with the same rules to succeed in the same way. Even those rules are rigged to begin with. You must find how to be okay with whatever you do, and be okay with the consequences of whatever you do, and then that will allow you to kind of manifest your truest self.
Do you have a word for Snuggles? Okay, he wants a word for the day. He doesn't want it to be an easy word. He wants a vocabulary lesson or something. Okay, all right. Because I was gonna say the word for the day is faith from my point of view, because for obvious reasons. You have a word for this guy? You said awareness, or you want some kind of fancy version? You got some fancy version for him?
I think, therefore I thrive. You must always think, and then you can thrive from it.
Excellent. And the general, this is very, very pertinent to what we're saying. Dumb your streams down a bit to capture a larger audience. That's what right, Kaiser? To be what do you have to say about that? I'm sorry.
I have actually mentioned this obviously to Ike before, but this actually goes into the motivation aspect of this conversation. If Ike does dumb down his audience in order to get a larger audience, so if he dumb down the kind of discussion in order to get a larger audience, he might get a larger audience, but that won't be fulfilling to why he makes the videos. He makes the videos with the purpose to help whoever can be helped, and also for him to be able to, right?
Yes. The general. I go ahead. Go ahead. Right, ultimately, so what? If
he does dumb it down, what would happen is that he would no longer be fulfilled, and he may be lacking the motivation to even keep going, because he wouldn't get that oxytocin release that will actually keep motivating him to even continue. There's a primal carnal connection between achieving what you're seeking, and this is exactly what Dr. Thunder talked about. The artist, basically, Ike is a philosophical artist. And this is a philosophical product. So he will have to contend with it. I've given him some ideas, which is different than dumbing down necessarily. Right.
100%. And I'll second everything that you said, right? I am intrinsically motivated. If I dumb it down, I'll simply just stop doing it. You know what I mean? And for example, you're not going to find me on certain panels in this space having certain conversations. It's just not, I'm just not interested, right? However, here is the deal though. It is a challenge for me to be able to present certain things that are at a high level, in order being able to bring it down to a level that is more simple and measurable, intuitive and actionable, which is my little catchphrase here, is a challenge for me. So the challenge for me is this: how can I bring this stuff down from the mountaintop to the general audience? Not and at the same time not dumbing it down. Now that's actually a motivation for me too, because I can get my juices flowing with that. But to dumb it down for an audience, I would just stop. I wouldn't be doing it. I would not even be doing it to begin with. You know, to me that does not even make any sense. I wouldn't be here doing this. You know. So, but the challenge though is, how do you bring it down? Okay, so there's a difficulty there. And I like difficulty. I like high level abstraction, so on and so forth. I'm very much intrinsically motivated. So you're not going to get me to be motivated to do something for external reasons. So that is kind of where I am at. That is kind of where I'm at. And then, like Dr. Thunder said, I've always believed that I'm not the only one out there. And I don't necessarily believe that it's a small percentage, okay? Especially if you're talking about psychological types and so on and so forth. You could be like, okay, well, at least 20% of the population kind of is this way. How can I find those, appeal to them, and bring them in? Because I listen to certain channels. Let's say, for example, the artificial intelligence channel. Some of you may know this guy, Lex Fridman. Let me get a 1 in the chat if anybody knows Lex Fridman. A 1 in the chat if you know Lex Fridman. If you don't know Lex Fridman and you don't know his Artificial Intelligence podcast and you're here, you should definitely go check it out. Because if you're listening to this, you should go check out Lex Fridman, okay? So 1 in the chat if you know Lex Fridman. So my point is, I listen to people like Lex Fridman, and he's interviewing physicists and philosophers and all these other kinds of things at a very, very high level. But he has a sizable audience and he keeps it real, keeps it true, and I love that fact about him, right? And we have some people here who know Lex Fridman, right? So I tend to believe that if you keep it real, you'll find people like you. I found Lex Fridman. The unabashed conversations about artificial intelligence, talking about the matrix algebra that is being used by this particular machine learning algorithm or something. And I'm like, yes, yes, do that. Don't stop that. Don't water it down. Don't make some stupid thing with, stupid little abstract. It's like this. And it's like, no. That's an insult, because I believe that even if you don't get 100%, and people like me, I think this way too. When I listen to Lex Fridman, do I get everything that's being said by everyone? No. When I listen to these theoretical physicists on talking true theoretical physics, do I understand everything? No. But the struggle is the beautiful thing. The struggle of being able to take pieces of what they have, put it within context that I can understand, and so on and so forth, is my thing. The challenge on my end, as I mentioned and I'll mention again, is to be able to attract those people, find them. And if I had to dumb it down, then I wouldn't even be doing it. It's like just a negation. It will not happen. I will not be here spending 3 hours of my evening talking dumb shit. I'd rather kill myself. With that said, yeah, literally, I would rather kill myself than do that, okay? It's so, no insult, no heat, no judgment, right? But it's pretty disgusting to me. So, ladies and gentlemen, right? And I just put off, a whole bunch of people, but it's fine. We are out. And make sure, again, like, subscribe, bell button, all. For those of you who are new to the channel, please. My name is Aiko Gammon. I'm your host. And over here, we talk about being better and doing better. We try to make things simple, measurable, actionable, and intuitive. Over today, we had a conversation about why bother? Okay, and it went high philosophical. We were going metaphysical, epistemological, so on and so forth. But we also have other content that is easily digestible, but everything is always simple, measurable, actionable, intuitive, not watered down, not boiled down, because if I had to do that, then I wouldn't even be here. Peace.
On the shore, relentless in the war, the legions in our hearts, shed waters in our balls, the spirit and the flesh, the emotions that arrest, the cerebral will contest, propelling the unrest. Preachers and bandits with means underhanded, the teachers pedantic and lack understanding. So sweep out the sand with the broom in your hand, stand up, make we burn Babylon. Guess I can give the world to you, but the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. Cause I can give the world to you, but the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. With the semblance of a blaze, with gratitude and rage, we touch another page with delirious delight, impervious to light. This vitality and might encourages the flight. Preachers and bandits with means underhanded, the teachers pedantic and lack understanding. So sweep out the sand with the broom in your hand. Stand up, make we burn Babylon. Guess I can give the world to you, but the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. Guess I can give the world to you, but the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. But the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within. Cause I can give the world to you, but the falling of the curtain is for certain. Be careful where you're lurking, demon searching. The spirit and the women fight the battle within.
The unspecialist. This one is for you. Rastafari hold authority. Emperor Selassie, prophecy reveal. Wicked man get trampled under me heel. Rastafari where love is real. Oh, burn the wicked and burn out all warmonger. Strike the lightning and Jaja roll the thunder. Cast all the wicked man asunder. For the heartbeat a blunder. Bless up, don't get bad mind and jealous.